everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is Joanne Jaspan, and we are in our third installment of the Influencer Series for Founders Live, the sales track. And today we are going to focus on understanding how companies make buying decisions and who is at the buyer's table and really what roles they play and how you can get ahead of that and really help yourself by learning about that. So as time has gone on, even as recently as a couple of years ago, we've seen the averages of the buyer's table increase. We have numbers from a couple of years ago, last year, and rolling into this year. And what we're seeing, of course, is an upward trajectory, a trend that more and more people are getting involved in this decision making. Unfortunately, for those of us in sales, the more people that are involved, the more likelihood there is that the deal will not go through. It's kind of common sense, and I like this because it's keeping with our theme that we've been working with all year of really demystifying sales and kind of just bringing it back to common sense. But, think about planning, say, a movie night with friends. If it's just you and one buddy, it's pretty easy to pick a time in a movie and go. Now think that there are 7 or 8 of you and you have to come to a consensus. So you can understand why it makes things more challenging. The message here is that knowledge is power, and we want to understand who is sitting at that buyer's table, who is a stakeholder in this decision. And the sooner that we can start to understand who those players are and what their roles are, the better chance we have of getting ahead of that and really speaking to each of them. And I don't mean directly, but addressing each of their concerns. So I wanted to look at this really just kind of with two matrices or two ways of thinking about it. The first is understanding that the person you've initiated contact with, or vice versa, that is typically going to be your champion. And it doesn't so much matter what, horizontal they're in, and by that I mean which department they're in or exactly what their level is. But they are the person who has initiated this buyer's journey with you. So putting them at the center of the model, what we need to be aware of is that the other players that are going to come into this decision have different types of functions in the process. So we have the end users, or the folks that will be using the product. We have the influencers, people that are able to influence the decision. We have the actual decision makers. And then, unfortunately, we have the saboteurs, the naysayers, the folks that could prevent this deal from happening. So keep that in mind as we talk now about more specific buyer roles that you are typically going to see in a deal. And one caveat I want to mention, of course, the higher your price tag is, the more this will be relevant. The longer the sales cycle, the more complex the sales cycle. This will certainly apply relative to that. So buyer roles. And again, so today, or I guess last year was the most recent statistic I could find, 7.6, I think it was. So you've got your champion, and from there, we're just going to walk through the main other roles. You're going to have an economic buyer. You're going to have a technical buyer. You're going to have an end user. You may, depending on the company size that you're selling into, also have a legal buyer, legal influencer, and procurement department. So let's just spend a couple minutes unpacking each of these. And what I want you to think about is, nobody can be everything to everyone all the time, of course. But once you start to understand not only what these buyer roles are, but also what sphere of influence they have on the decision, and then who these people actually are, the more insight you have into that, the more successful you'll be, and the better the chances are. And you're really going to use your champion here as your partner. So think of it this way: at the first several stages of the sale, you are navigating your champion through all of the information that he or she has. And let's skip ahead and now assume that you've gotten to the point where it's been explicitly agreed upon that she or he wants to implement your solution. At that point, you're kind of going to shift gears, and now you're engaging with that champion in a way that you're really designing this alliance with them, and you're saying to them, hey, my job now, as I see it, is to support you and to facilitate in any way that I can, you getting the resources that you need. So let's do this together. So for the economic buyer, this is typically the person that's going to be either a head of a department, a VP, SVP, EVP. It could be a financial officer. But this is the person that holds the purse strings. They get to allocate and spend budget, and they are a decision maker as well. So this is typically someone that can approve or disapprove a deal. On the other hand, you have someone at the buyer's table that may be an end user, and this could be a line manager, it could be an actual individual contributor that will be using your solution. And here, you want to be able to understand how they're going to use it, how they engage with it, think about what their day-to-day is like, ask questions around that. These people are not decision makers, but they can be influencers, depending on the dynamics and the culture of the company and all the power grabs and alliances and that sort of thing. But very different than a technical buyer is the user buyer. The economic buyer. Then we have the technical buyer, and this could be a CTO, a CIO, anyone that oversees the sort of inner machinery of a company. And what they're going to be concerned about are things like, how easy is this going to be to implement with our existing systems? Is it compatible? Is this something that we could just develop ourselves? Is this going to be a total headache? Their lens that they're looking at this through is very different. So again, approaching this, you want to understand what concerns them and make sure that you are addressing those concerns as part of this cycle. A technical buyer is typically not a decision maker. They can't approve a deal, but they can say no. So these are folks that you definitely want to be cognizant of and try to understand, where they're coming from and address them in that way. I have a line in this slide here because I think it's important to note not every company is going to have a legal department or a procurement. But I will tell you, if they do, I have seen so many deals either completely tank or just get caught up in red tape for months and months and months because of procurement and legal. So the sooner that you can understand if those two departments exist and what their process is like, the easier time you're going to have. You can start to prepare for that. Sometimes you might want to send a sample contractual agreement over to legal ahead of time so that they can start to redline it, to read through it. Even if you're not quite there yet, it gets you ahead of the game, because if you wait until we have final sign-off from everyone else, it could take months. And then the procurement folks, you have to understand they are a special breed unto themselves. Their primary job is really just to understand, is this the most cost-effective, easiest option for us? They're very removed from any emotion to do with the sale. They're very removed from the need, the challenge that it's solving. It's just nuts and bolts with them, and procurement can take a long time too. what I suggest that you do in partnership with your champion is engage them and get them to help you and start to map out the buyer's table together. And you can ask really direct questions like, tell me about how your company makes purchasing decisions. Have you been a part of a purchasing decision at this company in this role before? Who's involved? Who ultimately gets to say so? Oh, really? Okay. What is he like? What is she like? Is this a person that is going to be easy to work with for us to get you what you're looking for? Or do you think we're going to have to really prove our case to them? Another great question to ask early on is, who on your team or in your company or at the buyer's table is the one that we really need to win over? Who is the saboteur? Who is the naysayer, and why? And if we can start to understand that early in the process, we really prepare ourselves to be able to approach this sales process in a way that gives us the best shot of being everything to everyone, even though, of course, in a vacuum, in a perfect bubble, that would be the case. But we can be most things to most people if we understand who those people are, what their personas are, what their motivations are, and really speak to that. And just one final word on that. I don't mean that, if you're doing a group presentation to 10 people, you're blah, 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 talking to everyone at once. But I do think it, can be worthwhile to acknowledge, I understand, of course, CFO, that your concerns and your initiatives might look a little different than, the department heads. And so you can always say, let's put a pin in that. Let's schedule some time one-on-one to circle back so I can really be sure I'm addressing everything that you need to know to feel good about moving forward. That is it for now. When we do these talks, they're quick little snippets of sales tactics and strategy. And I just want to invite anyone that's interested in exploring, getting a little bit deeper, spending a little bit more time to contact me at Jaspan Consulting. More than happy to chat casually, to sit down with you just to understand what it is you're working on and see if there's a fit there. Thanks so much, everyone. We're going to now turn over to the chat room and ready to take your questions. Thanks for joining us.